Great to have you back with me today here at the Bushka on Blitz. we've had quite a bit of material coming out lately. After we finally got through that bloody song, we've had a few reviews. We've had a couple of platoon booms things going up. The Object 704 is our last review, and we're going to tip it off today on the T110E5, the American Tier 10 heavy tank. Now, as always, if you want to have a chat, you can log on to Twitter and add me at Bushka on Blitz. We're on the YouTube channel, obviously. Subscribe below. It always helps if you like and subscribe. On the Asian game server forums, the English speaking section, always having a chat, a bit of banter on there. There's plenty of people yarning on there. Or add me in game under Bushka. I usually have no problems at all. The friends list still has space, boys and girls. And as you know, if you've added me quite often, I will have a chance to platoon with people, and it's always a good bit of fun. Now, the T110E5 was the first Tier 10 heavy tank, or indeed the first Tier 10 tank I ever owned. And as such, it was actually the tank that I drove into the ground without being very good at. 450 battles at 51%, which is pretty much below par for me, but it was actually sub 50% when I started a couple of months ago to try and build it back up. And I've gone back to it sporadically for 5 and 10 game spurts over that period of time. As I progressed as a player, so has the tank progressed, and I've gone from quite a torrid affair with it at the start, where I enjoyed having a Tier 10, but gee, I wasn't very good at it, and the tank really didn't suit me, to now where I just love it. It's a great tank. It's a really interesting tank, and I've learned a lot about the tank, and I learned a lot about the way to play the game by driving this tank and how you have to drive it to be successful. It's a flexible machine. It's not really the standout performer in any one stat, but it's so good in so many that it doesn't have a lot of weak points. It can hull down. It can't side scrape particularly well because it's got such thin side armour, but it can exploit terrain because it's got good gun depression. It's got -8 degrees of gun depression, which is top of Tier 10 tanks with the mouse, would you believe? It's got a great gun. It's not the best gun. I think it's the second best gun in Tier 10. The FV215B has an absolute ball terror of a gun, but at the same time, it's got its own idiosyncrasies and can be quite difficult to drive. It's a rear-mounted turret, so although it's got 7 degrees of gun depression, it doesn't really get much of a chance to take advantage of that because the turret is set so far back on the chassis of the tank. It's quick. It's only got a 37 km/h top speed, this tank, but it gets there pretty quickly, and there's stats you can't see in the garage. Like you'll see here, it basically just gives you maneuverability for your engine, and it tells you your horsepower and your weight and those kind of things, and tells you traverse speeds and all that kind of stuff. But what it doesn't show you is soft stats. For instance, the soft stats for this tank compared to, say, the IS-4 and the IS-7, when it goes over soft ground, hard ground, medium surfaces, those kind of things, the lower the numbers, the better. And this thing has the lowest numbers of heavies apart from that FV215B going around. It's got great soft stats, and it's no surprise it's quite a light heavy tank. It's only 54 tons. 54 ton is very light for a heavy tank. It's lighter than the E50M. It's much lighter than the IS-7, which is actually a surprisingly small tank. You can see here from the height of the IS-7, it's not a huge tank. Look at that, that's a behemoth, the E100. That's 120 plus tons. The IS-4 too is a very low profile tank, but it's lighter than both those. You'll see the IS-4 is 61 ton. It's got a lot more armour. The E5 has quite a thin armour profile on the side and rear, but it's got a very trollish front. It's rounded. It's got 254mm of armour at the front. Now, whatever you do in this game, do not ever believe the garage stats here, which tell you it has 254 millimeters of front armour. It's got 254 millimeters of front armour in a tiny, tiny little strip at the very sharp edge of that front chassis. But we'll get in the armour and armour inspector. So it's a flexible tank. It's fast for its class. It's a heavy. It's got good acceleration. It's got excellent traverse numbers. It's 25 and 20, which means 25 degrees of traverse, 20 degrees of turret traverse. Now, it's better than both the IS-7 and the IS-4 in that state, only just with the IS-7 since they've been buffed, but it's still better, and plus its terrain resistance. You have to factor that into those stats. So its raw numbers of turning are going to be slightly better, but because it's got better terrain resistance, that's going to shine out, and you're going to see that in some of the gameplay where when it's faced with mediums, it really does well. It manages to keep them more or less in front, or at least in a position where they don't get easy shots in on flanks. Unlike the E100 and the Mouse, which are obviously barn doors and very, very easy to go around. Even the IS-4 is still a fairly easy thing to go around. So, I mean, in terms of traverse, it's still not going to be as good as the FV215B, which is a whole different kettle of fish. Rear mounted, soft, massive, big side armour, but a killer gun and able to side scrape a lot better than this, but can't really hull down the way this thing can. It does have weak spots. I'm sorry, I'm rambling a bit now. It's just a really interesting, flexible tank. It does a lot of things well. It does nothing in terms of absolutely much better than the competition, but it does a lot of things really well, and it makes for a tank that you can be quite successful with. As you can see here, this is the run I did yesterday, solo, no platooning, just trying to get some footage for this review, and yeah, it was pretty outstanding. You can see there, very good for a solo tier 10 run in a heavy tank. Now the gun. Let's have a quick chat about the gun. The 120mm M58, brilliant gun. 0.35 dispersion, 2-second aim time, 400 alpha, so 6 rounds per minute, around every 10 seconds. Your pen numbers are outstanding. 258 is your standard pen, and 340 is your average pen on your heat. Exact same stats for your IS-4. That's got the same pen values as this gun, but the aim time on this is 2 seconds, and that's what counts. The FV has a 1.7 second aim time, which is ludicrous, and that tank is obviously all about the gun, and that's brilliant, but the 2 seconds is more than low enough. It means you can snipe with this gun if necessary. You can pinpoint targets, and you don't have to sit still for a long time. You can take a lot more snapshots, and it's got a nice healthy alpha of 400 spread over 6 rounds per minute. So with a rammer, your vents and your mastery all going, you're really churning out the fire in this thing. Just for an example, I'll show you the IS-7. The Ruskies have never been one about guns. 4.7 rounds a minute, 260 average pen, and 303 on your APCR. So you're actually quite poor on your gold pen there in comparison. 460 alpha, which is nicer, but it's 0.40 dispersion and a 2.9 second aim time. That's like an extra second on your aim time. That's a long time in this game. If you have a look at the IS-4, again on the gun, the 122mm M62T2, same gun as the very similar gun, sorry, to the way the IS-7 is set up, but it's lower alpha, slightly faster rate of fire, 0.38 dispersion, but still a 2.9 second aim time. So all these guns are clearly inferior for mine to the T110E5's weapon. The E100 is a completely different animal. 3.69 rounds per minute, 235 pen on your AP. You are going to be firing gold like nobody's business in that thing. You're going to have to fire heat, and it's going to cost you a packet, but it has that 640 alpha, 0.40 dispersion, 2.9 second aim time. Very different animal, but I mean, you can't go past the gun on this tank. It's an outstanding weapon. It allows for this brilliant flexibility, especially when dealing with mediums up close and personal. It gives you a very solid DPM for a tier 10 heavy. Excellent accuracy for a tier 10 heavy. 0.35 dispersion, clearly better than everything outside of the FV215B, which is 0.33 dispersion. But in your traditionals, your IS4s, your E100s, your Mouses, your IS7s, yeah, it kills it. And -8 degrees of gun depression, not amazing. You get -10, for instance, on your T34, for those of you who are looking for a point of reference, but it's more than enough to hull down. And the fact that you've got this armour profile the way it is, which is quite trollish at the front, means that you can take that gun and put it places with that flexibility. We're always talking about flexibility with this tank. It's versatile. It can perform so many different roles. It can hull down, and it can flank, and it can hold a cap, and it can beat up a medium, and do all these kind of things. It's got weak points, and we'll get to those. But yeah, I'm really loving this tank, and I highly recommend this tank for anyone. But straight out of the box, you have to know a few things about it. So let's have a look at the armour profile and see what I'm talking about. So here we are, we're having a look at the T110E5 from the perspective of the 130mm S70, which is on the IS4. Same basic stats of penetration that the T110E5's gun actually has. And you can see here, mostly red. For the most part, it's a very strong tank, the armour profile. You have a couple of weak points, and we'll have a look here at the collision model so you can see that. That red strip across the front is the only point where it's 254mm on the front of the tank. That's why you should never really pay any attention whatsoever to what's written in those game stats at the side of the tank in the garage. They bear no real resemblance to it's far too complex to break down into one single alphanumeric value. But basically, you're looking at a very thin, hard to pen auto bounce zone across the front of the tank, with a very strong upper glacis, which is really well angled and will auto bounce most stuff, and a weaker lower glacis, which you can see there, which is only 140mm, and is really a lot less angular than the top. For all that, though, it will still bounce an awful lot of shots, and if you can hull down to any degree, it means that there's very, very little that the enemy can do to you, apart from obviously this area up top, the 178mm machine gun turret. Now this is your big weak spot. This is the weak point that everyone will hit you with, and when you first get this tank, no one really tells you this. You think you're just getting penned out of the blue, but what's happening is people, when you hull down with this tank, if you don't move backwards and forwards, people will go straight to that top turret and pen you time and time again. Good players especially, they know where it's going. You can see there, anything up there is going to pen. Effective armour of under 200mm, and on a tier 10 vehicle, that is good night nurse. Effective armour under 200 on the front, for the most part, on the lower glacis. But you can jiggle around. It doesn't really change things. There's always going to be a green spot there. But what you can do is put people off, try and catch shots on your tracks, and move towards them. Because the closer you are, you can see the less visible your weak spots and the harder it is for them to pen. When you are in an up-close and personal face-off, people will try to lift their gun up and shoot that weak point up top. You've got to keep that turret moving and the tank moving at all times to maximise your armour profile. And that's really the trap for young players with this tank. If you do not move, if you do not constantly juke and jive this tank backwards and forwards, side to side, you will find very quickly that you will be constantly penned by lower tier tanks, and you will lose health and get frustrated with the tank. And that's the key, because it's a brilliant tank for hull down. It's an excellent vehicle for all kinds of occasions, and it's very flexible and very versatile. But if you do not move and keep moving, people will find that weak spot up the top and they will drill you with it. And that's really the tank in a nutshell. It's just solid all round, good armour profile, very trollish. You can see that turret, it's weak as buggery at the back, but most turrets are going to be weak as buggery at the back. It's got cheeks that can be penned, but again, there's small sections, and the gun mantle is absolutely reliable. Look at that, 585mm of effective armour up the top there. It's all auto bounces all over the place. It's a lovely tank, good to look at, and the armour profile is exactly fitting the bill. I mean, if you angle it like that while you're shooting over the top of a hill, it's just a whole lot of red. Very easy to bounce and very easy to troll people over the top of small obstacles with your gun depression of -8 degrees. That's the armour profile of the T110E5. Now the T110E5 in the flesh, we're not going to go back into the garage, bugger that for a game of soldiers. Here we are, out in the real world. You can see the pimple on the top of the turret there, and you'll see that there's a hill in front of me, a little bit of camo. Team's on the right. I'm feeling all warm and cozy here. I've got cover on the right, I've got cover on the left. Time to do the business. Now, the T110E5 is a popular tank with good players for legitimate reasons. Mainly, it's maneuverable, it's flexible. It allows them to translate thought and idea onto the battlefield. Like, so if they see something occurring, they can get there quickly. They can respond and they're not put out of position. If you're in an E100, to a lesser extent an IS-4, certainly since the buff, or a mouse, or something that's big and hefty and relies on armour, then you can't respond to the changing tactics of the battlefield nearly as well as you can in a tank like this. And not only that, when it gets there, it has a strong enough armour profile that it can actually contribute and hold a line like a proper heavy. It's not just a pretend heavy. It's not like an IS-8 where you have to use profile and cover and terrain and flank and everything. It's a legitimate big dog. It can get out there. You can see here we're holding the line quite comfortably on the left-hand side. We've found a good hull-down position. This is the one channel, and we can hold this. Likewise, if there was no one coming down this channel, we could drop an engine boost and pump over to the other side in no time at all. And that's what I did when I started doing gameplay. You can see here, no plats there, just lots of victories running the T110E5, getting the gameplay. And we brought it back up to in excess of 51%, which sounds crazy to say that that's a good thing, but gee, I mistreated this tank when I first got it. I really didn't give it its full due. I didn't give it the opportunities that it needed. You can see the gun. It's pinpoint for a heavy. It really does get out there and do the business. There's the old T32, the Tier 8 version. Say hello to Big Daddy. It's a funny looking tank, that T32. Grand tank in its own right. And we will probably one day get around to reviewing that one. But today it's the day of the Tier 10 Heavy. And the E5 is where it's at. So what we're going to do is have a look at some gameplay. Before we do, we're going to have a little chat about some strategies with this tank. It can hold a line here, and you can probably hear the dog in the background sniffing away. I've got to take him for a walk in a sec. But it can hold a line, but it can also get out in the flanks and push with the mediums, and it's there that it can do some real damage on certain maps. We'll have a look at Temple. We're also going to have a look at just how well it can traverse and dogfight versus mediums. And I want to mention it again, those soft stats, the stats that don't show up in the garage, like the terrain resistance on hard and particularly on soft ground, are so much better on this tank than they are on the IS-4 and the IS-7. And they really do make a huge, enormous difference when you're trying to keep heavies and mediums in front of you. Fast Killer here, you can see him. He's a very good player in that T62. He just ran out of teammates. And I know we've got the hit points to do the business, so we just go back and do it. Yeah, he did, I think, 4.5k this game. Something along those lines. So, the T110E5. I like it. A lot of people like it. I'm a convert. It's like a good old rock song. I started off no good, but by the end of it, I've got the girl, and you know, won all the victories. You can see here it's getting around nicely, on the move, firing, very stable gun platform for a heavy tank. Yeah, what else to say? I like it a lot. Let's have a look at the gameplay and maybe figure a few things out as to how you should use it and how I use it and how it certainly can be more successful, or how you can be more successful using it. Onwards and upwards, boys and girls. Here we are on Lost Temple. Down the left flank, we've pushed out, we've used our engine boost, and we found a little T44 firing gold like nobody's business. There's a scent with us, and you'll see this T44 ballsy little guy. He keeps coming up, keeps stepping up to the plate. I don't know, this dismiss battery thing. You'll see later on, there is a game where I get brutalised because of that. But be that as it may, let's stick with the script here. That T44, he's done his level best. God bless him. He's probably run out of gold. I don't know, but we kill him, polish him off, and you can see we've looked at the teams here. There's the two mediums they've got that are lower tiers. There is another medium running around out there that I would have expected to see out here. But be that as it may, we've certainly dusted up these guys, and we've used just the brute force, the bullying power of a Tier 10 heavy. with a good armour profile and a decent amount of mobility to get out in front and ruin the day for these guys. Save the flank, absolutely destroy them, and go onwards and upwards to have a walk in the park win on this game. And it's because of the ability and the flexibility of the tank that you can do this, and you should be doing this, especially if you've got other heavies that can hold the line for you in town. Sometimes hitting the flank is the right way to go. And when you get there, you can also snipe because you have a .35 2-second aim time gun. Now, here we are on Port Bay. The new map, I see on the right-hand corner of my eye here, there's an ISU 152. I want to keep him around, and there's an E50 up the top, and I know if I don't push forward and help, that E50 will simply stroll through and hammer him. I know that because he's a good player by the look of it. It is PLV or Yossi, TEA. And he does the right thing here. He's in the E50, but the ground is on my side. It's all hilly and slopey, so I'm going to be able to use gun depression, and the fact that the E50 has an issue with going up big steep hills. It's not the best medium to be doing that in. Now, Yossi does very well here. He gets a lovely shot into my turret ring. And you can see it slows me right down. But even then, even slowed down, look at the way the tank still gets around, still moving around, always keeping him in front, making life tough, closing off the angles, turning through again. Yeah, obviously it helps having good friends with you, but it's just another example of how this tank isn't overawed when it gets stuck in a dogfight and a brawl with mediums. And we're going to turn back around here, and there's a T-54 coming as well. And you'll see I'll often close up with this tank, get really up close and personal. We hit another one in on the fly, that lovely little small aim time gun. The reticle never gets too massive. And we close it up because it really narrows down the ability of the enemy to find. Now, if he's not firing gold, then he's only got 201mm of pen, that T-54. And even if he is firing gold, the angles are now so steep that it's almost, oh, look at this, the poor T-54. Tear your hair out when that kind of thing happens to you. So here we are doing the same thing. We're getting out on the wing, running the flank on desert sands, one of my favourite things to do in this tank. Quite often you will come across nasties out here. Now this E50M has a very good gun, .30 dispersion, low aim time. When we get one back into him, again, low aim time. It's just a beautiful thing. It's really hard to overstate the value of a 2-second aim time on a Tier 10 heavy. When you play IS4s and pre-buff too, IS4s and IS7s, and you have to deal with 3s and 3.4 second aim times, yeah, it makes a huge difference to get out on one of these things and actually just treat it like a little zippy medium. Now the gun depression, you can see there, we can get the gun down. We stuffed the shot, but we're still getting the gun down, which is important. It's really hard with -8 gun depression to always get it down, but it's a lot harder with the -5 and -6 that you see on some of these Russian tanks that we're fighting. And just bullying, just using all this armour, this big gun, that 400 alpha, the good rate of fire, getting out there and being manoeuvrable. You see the gun depression work again there. Really, really successful. I think we actually end up losing this game, yeah, but we do a good job anyway. The T62A pushing out into the E50M. Now we've hounded this E50M all the way across the map. We didn't stop pushing. One of the reasons is if you stop pushing on a flank like this, you immediately become vulnerable with that turret. And if you see them aiming at your turret when they're in front of you like this, you start jiggling about. Now he's going for the lower glacis, as he should, because he's got a very nice weapon there. .30 dispersion, good alpha. You can see me jiggling around that lower glacis, just making shots hard for him to hit. He turns and gets one on the track. Good driving by that E50M. But unfortunately I've got a mate there to give me a hand. And I just stop him from moving forward, get another into him. Done. He does take out the Object 704 though, and that was a big play by that 50M. Now you can see the turret on the M103, very similar to the turret on the T110E5. Slight indentations on the edge of the cheek. We just hit his viewport there, take out the commander. And those little turret cheeks are where you want to hit on the M103. Now, there we go. Great gun. Look at that. Straight through the side of the cheeks firing AP, 258 pen on average. So we can do it there. And look at the aim time. Small aim time allows you to actually keep firing on the move and stopping and moving and firing. And anytime there's a hill or something, it helps the armour profile of this tank. Now I'm trying to stop this Jagdpanzer E100 from getting flanked because obviously he's my last friend left in the world. There's a T95 sitting in the cap and M103 over there getting free shots. We're going to go for those cheeks again. We nail another one in. Tough shots, but this tank can make them. They're not fluke shots. They're not always going to go in, but there's certainly shots that this tank's capable of making. This is a tough shot to go for, going for the top hatch, which is always going to be tough on a moving target, and that bounces predictably. But you've seen we've pushed the flank hard. We've done our best. We've done a good job. We're going to go reset the cap here. We use the heat, I think it's 335 average pen on your heat, and that means that we can go through the lower plate of a T95. As you can see there, we don't have to worry about going for the hatches. And I switch that heat back out in a sec, I believe. Here we go. Here comes that M103. Now we're going to stick with the heat. I'm not sure why we did that. It's always interesting to watch these games back and wonder what was going through my head, because my left is now totally unprotected. This is a balls all-in kind of strategy. That T95 has missed me and we're backing up. We've finally realised, yeah, we're in trouble here. But we are going to get that top turret. We're going for it. Boom. Great gun, isn't it? Really good gun. However, we do have an issue here because we have actually had a little snafu with the driver, and you can see what I would have liked to have done was take off, go up the tracks as that guy's going, and then hit him from the side. And we would have had time to do that. Minute 55 left, but with the driver screwed and our repair kit on a cooldown, there's not much we can actually do about that. So we're going to have to go and try and reset the cap frontally with him just sitting there waiting for it. And I should have switched over here to heat and just taken out his tracks, but whatever. We all make mistakes, and this was a big mistake to make. And probably what you'd call a game-breaking mistake because we lose. But we did our level best for most of the game. And you saw the tank made some really good shots there. They were quite quick. They were on the move. We still did nearly 5k damage, so it's not like we performed terribly poorly. Now, I'm going to show you this game in particular because I want you to realise the quality of this gun. I'm going to fast forward through the startup. We blow engine boost here. I've looked at the opposition team. I want to get up the top before anyone else does and use this gun depression and this lovely trollish semi-curved armour at the front to actually fire over this hill. It makes it very tough for them to return fire, but there's no one here. So we're left in a bit of a quandary. Do we push on down into territory undiscovered and give that Jagdpanzer E100 and all his mates a chance to merrily go at us, or do we snipe? And the easy answer is we snipe. Now, if this was an IS-7 or an IS-4 even, or an E100, I would feel very confident in yelling at the bloke saying, "Move, you bloody noob." But this tank has an excellent gun on it. It's .35 dispersion, and that shot goes in too, by the way. It's .35 dispersion. It's a 2-second aim time. This is money for jam right now. And I miss a few shots because I'm not the world's greatest player, but you can see we've now had a whole bunch of shots. And no, that obviously didn't go in. I thought that one went in. Never mind. So there's a pattern. He's at long range, can't see him. It's a blind shot, but I know where he is, and the tank's got a great gun, so we make that shot. And it's all really over bar the shouting here. They're absolutely in all sorts, licorice all sorts. Object gets lucky, pushes forward. And like anything, you've got to know when the time is up and when it's time to move and all that kind of thing. But that object, talk about 9 lives. He's dead set. You won't escape us again. Yeah, someone grabbed him. So you can see, if there was a tank coming up here, we would have been in a fantastic position to hold the flank for the team. As it was, we ended up in a position where we could pump out DPM into these guys, which is all well and good because the tank's well equipped to do it, and you should be doing it if there's an opportunity to do it like this. It's a lay down misère. There's no reason not to. You rest of your team is doing a good job down there. They're keeping him stock still and ready for action. I should probably have moved down on that E100. The E100s are a bugger of a thing to snipe when they're moving around like that, because the turret will go from a wide open shot to an absolute joke of a shot in no time at all. But we're moving down, Jagdpanzer E100, and you're going to get a look at the quick aim time on this gun again. We want to shoot the lower plate, as always, of a Jagdpanzer E100. It just got serious because we lost a couple. So you'll see here, we'll shoot. He's got a big aim time. We're drawing back. He rushes his shot. We've got a very small aim time. We just push forward again. We take another shot straight in that lower plate. Gun depression is king. Look at it. It's just so much easier going over the top. Oh, that bloody battery thing. And when I get that battery thing, quite often it will pause the controls, or it won't allow the controls to move for a few seconds afterwards, and it costs me a game, or costs me a death anyway in a game. As you'll see soon, probably cost me a mastery badge, come to think of it. But great gun, great aim time, great gun depression. You can see it all working here. That ST1, he was solid enough. He didn't have a lot of options. It's always tough. Remember this, guys, anytime you're in a map and everyone goes one direction and it's a big map with big flanks, what you're going to end up doing is allowing the opposition team, anyone that flanks, to actually just get out there and bust you up. They'll have clear flanking shots the whole time, and it's big time here, but even more so, Oasis Palms, for God's sakes, if you're going to get people camping the respawn there, and everyone goes one way, it's nearly like giving the enemy a huge advantage for nothing. You've got to have scouts out both flanks. As you saw there, it's disastrous not to. And I think we did about 4,000 damage. So, very solid game again. And this is what I'm talking about, Oasis Palms. I'm getting out in the flank and scouting. There's another guy going out in the left. There's going to be a couple of guys go out in the left, actually. And we're now giving targets. There's now a crossfire going on. This T-54, God bless him, he does his best. I don't think he scores any damage at all. Just one of those games, rough gig. But he got out hard. I'm out here bullying, and there they are. Now, this is what we're talking about, that gun depression, Russian gun depression. This 54, to get shots at me in the main, has to come over the top of this hill. I pull back a little bit, and you'll see he's a little bit frustrated. He has to move up and put himself in harm's way to get shots. Otherwise, he's got to hit that nipple on the top of the turret. And you can see here, we can get shots into him. Very tough for him. He's hitting the dirt there. They just don't have the gun depression to hold down up a hill and be successful. You always want to be on the top of the hill, boys and girls. We're going to cut off his corner here. Just make life a little bit tough for him. Give him absolutely nothing. And this is the game I was talking about with that bloody iPad bug. For some reason, my iPad, when it's charging, if it's on a low value, the battery must be stuffed or something. It'll go between 5% and 10% and just keep dropping backwards and forwards. And every time it does, it comes up with that bug. And when it does, I often can't move the controls at all. And that's what happens here in a tick. You can see the best place for me here with all those tanks is hull down. And the best way to be hull down is to kill this guy and then use his bloody carcass to literally just come backwards and forwards and put damage in to my heart's content. Look at these guys. Look at the gun going to work here. And just moving forward and backwards. All they've got to shoot at really at this kind of angle and this kind of incline is my turret. And you can see the IS-7 trying to get up, but it's hard to hit that turret when there's a whole bloody tank in the way. And we're just getting free-for-alls here. We are spotting every one of these guys. We are putting damage in. We are killing it. And there's a Yag Tiger who is sitting in the far corner of our respawn. Just sitting there. Has not moved a muscle. And he does over 5k damage here. Most of it off these spots. You can see. And here we go. Watch this. Can't move. Nothing moving. Nothing moving. There it goes. It works again. We take that damage. And that damage we take there is probably the damage that, ruins our day. We were killing it otherwise. You can see him, it's stuck again. Yeah, very average. It's what you get for forgetting to put your iPad on charge, though. Much deserved. Long story short, we end up winning that game. The Ag Tiger at the back struggles tremendously by having to, he had to reverse up the hill. But the IS-7 also went out and got him a heap of spots. But that's part of being a team. He was a sniper. We did 4.5k. He did 5,700. Hard to beat that. Very, very happy winning a game that way. I'll take it any way I can. Now, this is our final game, Castilla, and this really highlights the abilities of this tank and the flexibility of this tank and all the really, really positive parts of it. The gun depression, or the lack thereof of some of our enemies. The aim time on this, now you can see that E100, he's got a big aim time. He's also going to get cock-blocked by an ST1 who comes down behind him and ruins his day. So we're going to go out. ST1's an easy shot. We'll take that. And we back up. The E100 just bounced nicely off the auto bounce zone on the front. He's on a long reload. He's trying to back up. That ST is screwing with him. We put another into him and back up. The E100, poor bugger, decides to just burn through. Cops one for his troubles on the way. This is where it gets interesting. You see those houses up there on the left? That T-44 has the idea of going up to those houses, coming around, and then sniping into my flank, and I'm caught then between a rock and a hard place. But I've been to this movie before. I've starred in this movie, in fact. I've been that T-44, and I know what's on. I know what's going down in Funky Town. I am dropping the hammer and getting the hell out of there across into the middle. So I have cover. And it means I'm going to have to take a shot from this ST1, but I give myself a good angle, so it's not going to be easy. He misses, he bounces it, and I'm now only faced with a Tiger. And you'll see the T-44 pop up on the right in just a second. There he is, cheeky bugger. That's exactly where he was headed, but we're not there anymore, so sucks to be you. We're pumping rounds now into the Tiger 2, and we've got to get rid of him before that T-44 comes back and makes our life a misery. And now this is what watching the mini-map really helps with this tank, because it can respond to things really quickly, and it can move around really quickly. That Tiger 2 is trying to keep a straight line so he can't be shot from the front, by the way. That's why he's still side on, because he's picking me as the lesser of two poisons, which is probably the worst decision. So this T-44, he's finally got back. He found he didn't get what he wanted over there, so we are now going to push the pace here. Now, we took one from him. We're going to take one from the ST as we move forward. We expect that. And the T-44, that was good, solid play on his part. We just read the game a touch better than him at the time. But we've all been in that situation where it's obviously come off for us and not gone the other way. We bounced one there from that T-54 up top. So we're aware that he's there. And there's an E75 long. We're going to go down and help that E75. Good traverse, good speed, climbs well, fairly quick off the mark for a heavy tank. Look at that gun. Long range, low aim time, pumping them. That's what it's all about, boys and girls. That's why the E5 is a successful little machine. Now, that T-54 doesn't know I'm there now, or at least that I've advanced this far down the track. There's no one spotting me for him, so I'm setting up for a shot. Now I'm going to start reversing and pre-turning because I know he's going to try and flank. You can see I'm waiting for him. He knows it. He tries to juke me out. It's not going to work. And there we get our second kill. So now there is a 3 tank to 2 advantage, but one of those tanks is the poor old E100 that got cock-blocked at the start of the game by the ST1, and he's lost a fair few hit points, and our E100 seems to know what he's doing. I think he has nearly 3k damage this game. But there is a T62A and an ST1. I'm not too worried about the ST1. He's shown himself to be a bit of a numpty, but the T62A has 3 kills and has been rolling around doing the business, so I'm more worried about him. Now you'll note where I fight this T62A is really important. He has very poor gun depression, like a T54. One of the best things you can do with a Russian medium is to fight them if you've got good gun depression on an area that's hilly with an obstacle around you so they can't get around behind you. Now that building is exactly what I'm talking about, and I've done this before here with a T54 before, not a T62. You can see he goes down in that depression, he no longer has a shot on me. And it's just one of the great things that this tank has as an advantage. It has good gun depression. and it can traverse well enough that it keeps him in front and ruins his day. Now you watch, he goes down again, raises his gun up, can't shoot me in the side. Really, really frustrating if you're a Russian medium driver, and I know that it's frustrating because I've done it before, and I give up the shot there, but I stop him from getting around behind me, and I don't really care. I've got the hit point advantage. So there we go. That was a 3-kill game, which is lovely, and also a mastery badge. I think we did over 6,127. It's a very solid game, probably the best game I've had in this, certainly since I started playing it again. Really enjoyable tank, cannot recommend it highly enough. And if you guys are thinking about grinding down a heavy line, I think this is a fun line to grind down, but beware, it is not as simple and straightforward as grinding down, say, an IS-4 or an IS-7, even though that sounds funny. A lot of people say they have troubles with those tanks. But the IS-7, the armour is so simple, you just point it at them, and then it's up to RNG. Can they pen you or not? That's all there is to it. With T110E5, you've got to be a little bit more agile. You've got to be a little bit more... You've really got to watch the map, because if you don't utilise the tank skills, if you just treat it like a big block of heavy, then you won't really be successful with it. And I think that was why I struggled with this tank tremendously, and I did not like it. And I was wrong, okay, because I wasn't good enough for the tank, basically. So I know it's nearly always the case. I see people yelling and screaming about tanks that I think are brilliant, and it's nearly always the case that you're just not good enough for the tank yet. You might be a good player, but you've got to adjust your play style, you've got to adjust the way you use the game, or you've got to pay more attention to the mini-map. And if you do all those things, then this is the kind of tank that will allow you to actually display the full gamut of your skills and abilities, as you're obviously an amazing tanker. But yeah, there you go. I carry on like a pork chop. I've been Bushka on Blitz, boys and girls. It's been wonderful having you with me. It's great to be back reviewing. Next up, we're probably going to be running down the German medium line. Have the Indian Panzer, and that's a really controversial little tank as far as I'm concerned. I have big issues with this German medium line, the Tier 8, Tier 9 tanks in particular, and we're going to investigate those and talk about how you can be successful in those tanks still, but their limitations and there's similarities to quite a few other tanks in the game that already exist, and you know, if you own them, why would you grind through again? And there's answers coming, my friends. There's answers coming. So I'm Bushka on Blitz. Thank you so much for having me. Stay safe on the battlefield. As always, jump on Twitter and add me at Bushka on Blitz. Follow up on the Asian Game Server forums if you want to have a chat, or just generally drop me a line in game and say g'day, and I'll have a yarn. Stay safe. Ciao.